Okay, so let's get started. So last time we were talking about the long run, how the long run exchange rate is determined. And it's very important to understand the long run. In order to understand the short run, you need to understand the long run. So this is very important to understand, right? So without understanding the long run, you don't know how the short run is going to be affected, because the short run, people's short run behavior depends on what they expect the future is going to be, okay? People cannot plan the immediate future without knowing the far future. And so the long run variable, we assume that the long run variable is the same as the expected future variable. Okay, so that is an assumption that we have been making all the time in the past. But let me just explain it one more time. That why? Well, maybe I should ask you rather than I explain it. So, why do you think? Let's say the EE. Why do we assume that this EE, for example, this future expected future EE in the next period? Why is it the same? We assume that this is going to be the long run nominal exchange rate. Okay, so the E, in other words, we assume that this is the E in the long run. So what justifies this assumption? What is the justification of this assumption? Now, first of all, EE is, what is the EE? EE is the market's expectation of the future exchange rate. The market, right? It's somewhat abstract, right? The market is not one person. The market is a collection of people, right? So it's kind of abstract. If you come to think about this, EE it's an abstract thing. It's not one person expectation. It's the market expectation. It's a group of people. It's the expectation of a group of people. But then we assume that this is going to be is equal to the exchange rate in the long run, as calculated by our model. In fact, as calculated by our model. Okay. So why? Can everybody tell me how do you justify this? It's not hard, actually. This question is not that hard. You just don't think about something too complicated. So what is the justification for that? Okay. So can you say something? Just yeah. Tell me why. Say something about why. How you can justify this? Yeah. You're still thinking. Yeah. Okay, you're still thinking. Okay, so so can you say something about it? Why? How can you justify this?
Because the expectation will cause some adjustments of people's actions at the current.
Well, yeah, what you said is true, but you did not answer this question. So how? What I'm saying is, how can we justify making this assumption? This is actually an assumption, you see. This is an assumption. So how, well, you have just said that it's important for people to know, what people expect will affect people's behavior in the short run, right? So that's why this is important. You just said that this is important. But we, in our analysis, we in fact calculated the E in the long run using our model and assume that that is the EE. This is an assumption. Maybe, okay, let me backtrack a little bit. So maybe it is not clear to you, maybe you didn't even know that we have made this assumption, okay? So let me tell you that this is our assumption, okay? So let me just backtrack a little bit. So from now on, okay, if you are not aware yet, this is our assumption from now on, okay? So do you remember, okay, so maybe it is still not very deeply, it's not very deeply understood by you that this is what we have assumed. But in fact, previously in our chapter 4, for example, remember we talked about permanent one-time increase in money supply, and then we say, okay, this permanent one-time increase in money supply, let's say if there's a 10% one-time permanent money supply, we say that the EE will increase by 10%. Do you remember that? So we're saying that a permanent one-time 10% increase in money supply will lead to a permanent, in the long run, will lead to a permanent 10% increase in E. In other words, a permanent 10% depreciation of the currency. Do you remember that? And what's the reason for that? Do you still remember? Why is it that a 10% one-time permanent increase in money supply, everything else being equal, would lead to a permanent 10% increase in E in the long run? Why? It's because of this concept of purchasing power parity. The relative prices should be unchanged in the long run because of long run neutrality of money. Do you still remember? Because of long run neutrality of money, therefore in the long run, any monetary shock, any pure monetary shock will have no real effect. And it has no real effect means that it doesn't affect the relative prices. And it doesn't affect the quantities. Remember, the real variables are the quantities or the relative prices, right? So remember I said that about the example of US jeans versus British sweaters, right? So if the US money supply increased by 10% permanently, then the relative price, in the long run, the relative price of American jeans to that of British sweater should not be affected, right? But in order for that not to be affected, and in order for the prices, the dollar price of American jeans and the pound sterling price of British sweaters, assuming that these are unchanged, okay, then the exchange rate must adjust. Okay. Okay, I'm sorry. I have to say that the price of the US jeans will have to increase by 10% because of, I take that. So the price of US jeans will rise by 10%, right, because of in the long run, right? But because the price of US jeans rise by 10%, okay, in the long run, therefore the exchange rate will also have to adjust so as to make this relative price unchanged in the long run. So therefore, the US dollar has to depreciate by 10% in order to make this relative price unchanged because of long-run neutrality of money, right? So long-run neutrality of money. But okay, make a long story coming back to this thing, so we have been assuming that, this long run, the E in the long run is equal to this EE. We have been assuming that. Maybe you didn't know that, but this is what we have assumed, right? So by the argument that I just explained this, right? So what's the long run? What's the E in the long run? The E is going to rise by 10% in the long run. And we take that as a rise in 10% in the EE as well, okay? So the assumption behind this, the justification of this assumption is that what we call the rational expectations, okay? The market has rational expectations. So it's based on rational expectation. Rational expectations. This is a very important assumption, and this approach has been used very widely. Rational expectations means that the market is rational. The market has full information. The market has full information. It is rational, and also the market understands how to calculate using the model. Okay. The market has full information. It is rational, and it also knows how to do the calculation based on the model. Okay. So these are the assumptions. It's kind of, abstract. It is debatable whether the market really can calculate based on the model. You can test, but you can test this. Hypothesis. I mean, the market is full of very smart people. Okay, the market is full of very, very smart people, intelligent people. People make a lot of money working for investment banks. So the investment banks and the commercial banks, they hire a lot of very good mathematicians. They certainly are very rational, and they certainly are smart. The market is. And does the market have full information? Well, most of the time, in an open market, in a fair and open market, the market has as much information as the government does. So we assume that this is an open society. Information is open to everybody, including the market. So the government does not have more information than the market. Okay, this is an assumption. Okay. All right. Let's just move on. Okay, so this is a long chapter. This is actually a very hard chapter, to tell you. So what are we getting at in this chapter? We're going to continue to push a little further on the purchasing power parity. So remember last time we talked about the law of one price, and then absolute PPP, and then we begin to talk about the relative PPP. Okay, and then the next that we're going to talk about is how, suppose you assume PPP is correct, then how do pure monetary shock affect the expected future exchange rate and affect future prices? So how do monetary policies affect the long run exchange rate? Okay, so that's one thing. So we took a look at the pure monetary shock, but then afterwards we will also look at some non-monetary shocks. Okay, how do these non-monetary shocks also affect the long-run exchange rate? Okay, this chapter is about how the long-run exchange rate is determined. Okay, there are basically two set of forces. One are the monetary shocks, and the other are the real shocks. Okay, both real shocks and monetary shocks will be taken into account when we talk about how the long-run exchange rate is determined. Okay, they are actually quite different. And also, we begin to, when you talk about the monetary shock, instead of just talking about one-time increase in money supply, we will begin to talk about some one-time increase in rate of growth of money supply. Okay, the rate of growth of money supply will have a very, very different effect. Okay, than an increase in the rate of growth of money supply will have a very different effect from just a increase in the level of money supply. Okay, increase in the level of money supply and increase in the rate of growth of money supply have very different effect. Okay, so you have to understand that. So why are we interested in a change in rate of growth of money supply? Well, the fact is that in reality, monetary policy is often associated with a certain rate of growth of money supply rather than just the level. It's more the rate. Monetary policy often affect the rate of growth of money supply rather than just the level of money supply. Okay, so it's a little bit subtle here. So we're going to get into that a little bit more. We're going to talk about how monetary policy is implemented in some later chapters. Okay, so okay, is that clear? All right. Okay, so let's see. So last time we talked about absolute PPP, relative PPP. Okay, so last time we sort of distinguished between the absolute PPP and relative PPP. So this PUS is the price level in the U.S. General price level, and PEU is the price level of the Eurozone. Okay. And remember, these two prices are, you can think of them as a consumer price index. Okay. And the two baskets can be different. The basket in the US basket can be different from the EU basket. The relative PPP is simply just taking the percentage change of the left-hand side and the percentage change of the right-hand side. Okay, this is a percentage change in the right-hand side. This is a percentage change in the left-hand side. So this delta E. So I write it as I write this as I write it as delta E over E is equal to delta P over P minus delta P star over P star. Okay, so this is how I write it because you remember whenever there's a star or asterisk, it means the foreign variable. Okay, without an asterisk, it's the home variable. So this is just this thing. So this is the inflation rate, home inflation rate. This is foreign inflation rate. This is percentage depreciation of the home currency. So relative PPP, if relative PPP holds, then if home inflation is faster than foreign inflation, then you expect in the long run that the home currency is going to depreciate. Okay, so that kind of is perfectly aligned with our argument previously about the American jeans and the UK sweaters. Okay, so if but so if in other words, if the U.S. Inflation is faster than the British inflation, then in order to keep the relative price of U.S. jeans to that of British sweater to be constant in the long run, then the U.S. dollar will have to depreciate in the long run. Okay. So in other words, the relative PVP is consistent with the relative price being constant. Okay, this is perfectly sort of consistent with our long-run neutrality of money. Okay, long neutrality of money. So that's why people kind of feel that relative PVP is a good assumption. It's a reasonable assumption. Okay. So once we establish this this concept, okay, then we are ready to talk about the monetary approach to long-run exchange rate determination. So the monetary approach to the long-run determination of long-run exchange rate based on, in fact, it is based on the PVP. Sometimes it has to assume absolute PVP, but most of the time you don't really have to. Okay, but let's just write this down and say, okay, this is our starting point. This is our starting point, even though it may not be correct. Okay, it may not be correct. This is absolute PVP. It may not be correct. Let's just start from there and see how far we can get. Okay, So it also, this long run, in fact, the rest of the thing is actually quite, you have seen this before. So let's say with two countries, right? So in the US money market, the price level is just equal to this, right? So it's nothing more than, the first equation is nothing more than there is equilibrium in the US money market. And the second equation says there's equilibrium in the Eurozone money market, right? So in the first equation, for example, we see when the U.S. Money supply increases, the U.S. price level will have to adjust as well. If given that these two things don't change. So in the long run, you will see that in the long run, we're going to argue that these two things are going to be unchanged, right? Because of if there's no ongoing inflation, okay. But in any case, okay, this has to be true whether it is short run or long run, okay. These two equations has to be true, whether it's long run or short run. Okay? In the long run, this is determined by long run levels of this thing, of this, all these things. Okay? Because in the long run, this is determined by just this two ratio, right? That's why if you take the PVP, absolute PVP seriously, is going to be the case. So that we will have the following prediction: the exchange rate is determined in the long run by prices, right? Which are determined by the relative supply and demand of real monetary assets in the money market across countries. So this is nothing fancy, nothing profound. We already sort of knew that, right? So monetary policy in both countries will affect the prices and the prices, if we assume absolute PVP, then prices will affect exchange rate in the long run. Okay, so this monetary approach to long run exchange rate okay, so the prediction so the prediction of this model is that a permanent rise in domestic money supply will cause a proportional increase in domestic price level. That's causing proportional depreciation in domestic currency. Okay, this is something you already know. The second one is a little bit more, is something new to you, thing, the interest rate, okay? So this model, this monetary approach to the determination of long-run exchange rate will actually predict that it will predict that something. It will predict something about the interest rate. Okay, so to the extent that an increase in the rate of growth of money supply, okay, if there's a rate of growth of money supply increases, that means the inflation rate will increase. When the inflation rate increases, it will actually increase the interest rate as well. The nominal interest rate will increase. So what this says is that suppose you increase the rate of growth of money supply. So what's the effect? The effect is that the inflation rate, the long-run inflation rate is going to increase, the long-run rate of growth of price level will increase, and as a result, the nominal interest rate will also rise. Okay. So what it's going to the effect is going to be that there's a rise in domestic prices because of the inflation, faster rate of inflation, and also a cost proportional depreciation of domestic currency. Okay, in the long run. Okay, in fact, it will sort of cause a depreciation, perpetual depreciation. If this rate of inflation, if this increase in rate of inflation is persistent, then the depreciation will also be persistent. So the currency will depreciate period after period, year after year, if you increase the rate of growth of money supply. So in other words, so if the Eurozone money supply, just think about a very simple situation. If Eurozone money supply stays unchanged, okay, just at a fixed level, but the U.S. Money supply grows at a certain rate, let's say, okay, 10%. Let's say that the U.S. money supply grows at 10% per year, okay? So how does it affect the exchange rate of the U.S. dollar versus the euro? Well, the answer is that in the long run, we expect the U.S. dollar to depreciate at a rate of 10% per year. Okay, all right. So so this is actually one implication of this monetary approach. Okay, and also, of course, that also is associated with a if a 10% rate of growth of money in the U.S. and 0% rate of growth of money in Eurozone, then what happens is that the U.S. Inflation rate will also be 10% per year as well. Okay, so that's and also the interest rate. Okay, what interesting actually, I forget to, this is very important. So if that is the case, then the interest rate of the U.S. It will have some effect on the interest rate of the U.S. because you remember the real interest rate is equal to, okay, so the nominal interest rate is equal to the real interest rate plus the expected rate of inflation, right? This is the real interest rate. And this is the nominal interest rate. This is the expected rate of inflation. This is it by itself is as an identity. But then the Fisher effect, you remember, I think we talked about the Fisher effect, right? So the Fisher effect basically says that, if it's a purely monetary shock, because money is neutral in a long run, so this is constant. If it's a purely monetary shock, this is constant. Then in an increase in 10%, the 10% rate of growth of money supply in the U.S. means that this is going to be 10%, right? And therefore, the nominal interest rate is basically just whatever that real interest rate is plus the 10%, right? So when the increase in rate of growth of money supply in the U.S. will increase this number, and therefore increase this number in the long run, but without changing this thing in the long run, okay? So this is the Fisher effect, remember, right? So, so therefore, the nominal interest rate, if there's an increase in rate of growth of money in the U.S., it will increase this number and also increase this number in the long run, and therefore interest rate, that is a long run effect of interest rate. So increase in money supply growth in a country will increase the nominal interest rate of the country. But at the same time, however, it's going to lead to a depreciation of the currency, okay, at the same rate. Okay, so that is the implication of this long-run theory. How about the output level? Well, the real output level will not be affected, of course, because of long-run neutrality of money. Oh, sorry. Here, this is not really talking about the effect of money growth. This is talking about how output affects the exchange rate. The effect of output would be, it will cause, if there is an increase in the real output level, it's going to lead to appreciation of the currency in the long run. This is nothing difficult. You actually have already sort of known it, right? So because an increase in, suppose that there's a long-run increase in the output level because the country's productivity has increased or technological improvement. So the output increases, the real output increases. And real output increases the demand for money, right? It increases the demand for money, and so it will actually, because the real interest rate does not change, right? And the nominal interest rate also does not change, right? So therefore, the only thing that has to adjust in the money market is that the price has to fall. The price level has to fall. That's why it will lead to an appreciation of the currency. Okay. So let me just recap these three things to tell you this is what you expect to see. So the effect of, so according to this monetary approach to long-run exchange rate determination, increase in money supply, okay, will lead to depreciation of the currency. And increase in interest rate due to an increase in inflation rate will lead to a depreciation of the currency, or associated with. I shouldn't even say it is lead to. So this is association. So increase in money supply will be associated with a proportional depreciation of domestic currency, and increase in interest rate due to the increase in the inflation, is associated with the depreciation of the currency, and also an increase in the real output level will be associated with a proportional appreciation of the currency. This is what you will see from this model. Okay. Okay. All three changes affect money supply or money demand and cause prices to adjust. So the quantity of real monetary assets supplied matches the quantity of real monetary assets demanded and cause exchange rate adjust. So this is what this is the mechanism. Let's go to in the absence of ongoing monetary growth in both countries, there would not be any ongoing inflation in both countries, right? So the nominal interest rate will be just equal to the real interest rate. Okay? So the real interest rate are determined by the real side of the economy, which assumed to be unchanged in the long run, right? In the long run, real interest rate is unchanged in the long run. Okay. Suppose outputs in both countries are unchanged. Okay. Then the long run exchange rate is only determined by money supplies in the two countries. Okay. So let's think about think about some sort of purely monetary shock. Let's do some thought experiment. So let's think about some purely monetary shock. What about the growth rate? So a change in the growth rate on money supply results in a change in the growth rate of prices, okay, in the long run. Again, so this is all long run. We're all just talking about long run, remember. Okay. So a constant growth rate in the money supply results in persistent growth rate in prices or persistent inflation at the same constant rate, okay, when all other factors are constant. All these real factors like output is unchanged, and okay, so inflation does not affect the productive capacity of the economy and real income from production in the long run. So this idea is nothing more than the long run neutrality of money. Okay, this does basically say this long run neutrality of money. Okay, inflation, however, does affect nominal interest rate. How? Well, I just said that, right? So inflation affects nominal interest rate. True, okay, so I was ahead of myself. So I've already more or less explained this one. So this is a Fisher effect, okay? So what it says is, okay, although this Fisher effect presented in this way is actually slightly different from the Fisher effect presented in this way. This Fisher effect, in fact, in a sense, I like presenting it this way. You know, in a closed economy, it also applies. Here, this is like a Fisher effect in the open economy. So this is like an open economy version of the Fisher effect, in a sense. Okay, so we have that closed economy version of Fisher effect, and then here is like an open economy version of Fisher effect. Okay, so you can derive this this relationship from the uncovered interest parity condition, right? So that's the uncovered interest parity condition. So if the financial market expects the relative PVP to hold, then you remember the relative PVP previously. We have that the relative PVP says that the what's that? This is actually there it is. Okay, so the change in exchange rate right. So So this is precisely, this is just this thing, right? Remember just now we say relative PVP implies this. So relative PVP. So then you substitute this into this, you get this, okay? So this is called the Fisher effect in the open economy. So the interest rate difference, nominal interest rate difference, is actually equal to the difference in the rate of inflation in the long run. Okay, so if a country, so in other words, what this says that if a country has faster rate of inflation, is nominal interest rate will also be higher. Okay. Is that true? Well, in the long run, that actually makes sense. So countries that has very high rates of inflation also has higher rate of interest rate, also have higher rates of interest. Well, actually, in a closed economy, you also observe historically, when the inflation rate is high, the nominal interest rate is also high. So back in the in the 80s, in the 1980s, the inflation rate was very, very high. It was more than 10% per year, and the nominal interest rate was also very high. Okay, so so that the Fisher effect, you can see the Fisher effect there. Okay, so so this is also the why I say this is this open economy version of the Fisher effect. You can also the special case of this will collapse to in a sense it will be a collapse to the closed economy version because let's say in a special case when there is zero money growth in the Eurozone, and this will be zero, right? And this will be the real interest rate in the Eurozone because there's zero money growth in the Eurozone, and this is a constant, right? So any monetary shock, that increase, any increase in rate of money growth in the U.S. will increase the rate of inflation in the U.S. 1-for-1. Any increase in this by 1% will increase the nominal interest rate by 1%. This is the Fisher effect, 1-for-1. So any 1% increase in this will lead to a 1% increase in this. Okay? So this is Fisher effect. A rise in interest rate causes an equal rise in interest rate on deposits of domestic currency in the long run when other factors remain unchanged. Okay, that's the Fisher effect. Okay, so now let's think about the kind of a thought experiment. So this thought experiment is that the U.S. central bank unexpectedly increases growth rate on money supply at time t0. So when I say unexpectedly, is that there's no anticipation until it's actually implemented. So the expectation occur only after the implementation. Just as soon as it's implemented, it's announced, so the expectation will change just at the time of implementation. Okay. Increase the growth rate of money supply at time t0. Suppose also inflation rate is pi in the US before t0 and pi plus delta pi. So in other words, the money growth rate was pi before t0, but then it increases to pi plus delta pi after t0. And in Europe, the inflation rate is 0%. Okay. So according to Fisher effect, the interest rate in the U.S. will adjust to the high inflation rate, right? So according to the Fisher effect, the inflation rate, the nominal interest rate will have to rise by delta pi. Okay. So so here is the diagram here. So the left-hand side A is just the money supply. It's something that we assume. But then the Fisher effect tells us that the nominal interest rate will have to rise by delta pi, right? Just the Fisher effect, right? Does that make sense? Okay. Now, now this is getting more difficult. Okay, this is getting more difficult. So now these two diagrams is difficult. So why? So this is a long-run time path of U.S. economic variables after a permanent increase in the growth rate of U.S. money supply. Okay, so we're saying that, you know, this will actually cause the price level of the U.S. to jump immediately, and then the growth rate of the price level is going to be faster than before. And also, the exchange rate, again, is also going to be a jump, meaning a one-time depreciation of the currency, and then a rate of depreciation of the currency at a faster rate than before. Okay. First of all, I want to say that this P is actually in logarithmic scale. It's the logarithm of P. This is the logarithm of E. Otherwise, you know, it cannot be a straight line, right? You know, if it's not, then it will be just a exponential curve. It will be a convex curve. So this is logarithm of price and logarithm of E. But anyway, so when this is logarithm, then a constant rate of change in P will have a constant slope, upward slope, right? Now as I said, what is the difficult thing? Okay. Why? Why is it so? Why is there a jump? Okay. Now let's think about this carefully. First of all, this is based on this monetary approach to the long run, to the determination of long run exchange rate. This path that we derive is not supposed to be, is not intended to be a prediction of what these things are going to be. These are just some, you may think of this as some asymptotic values, some steady state values, okay, some asymptotic values of the prices and asymptotic values of the E. It's like some steady state value, okay. The actual changes will not be exactly like that. These are long run. Remember, this is long run values, assuming that the prices are fully adjustable. You see, assuming that the prices are fully adjustable, so just assuming that everything is adjustable flexibly. So, but in reality, of course, there's the price level is not going to adjust immediately. So that's the key thing. Okay, so in the long run, prices are fully flexible. Okay. And so this is based on the long run, but in the short run, prices are not adjustable, not fully adjustable. Prices are sticky. When prices are sticky, then the actual path will not be like this. Okay. But let's just focus on the long run now. Okay. Now let me ask you, why is there a jump? Can anyone tell me why there is a jump? What's going on? Why the price has to jump? So now remember what is the, okay, so there's an increase in money supply in the US, increase in money supply, growth rate of money supply actually, increase the growth rate of money supply. So why is it that, yeah?
The jump is the increase in the level of money supply, and then the change in the growth is the increase in the rate of the money supply.
Can you say it one more time?
The increasing the money supply, like the jump, increasing the level of the money supply, and the change in the slope would be the increase in the rate of the money supply.
So you mean the jump is because of the increase in the
Level.
level, but there was no increase in the level. There's no increase in the level. It's there. There's no increase in the level of money supply. But something does change. So what is that thing? What is that thing that is causing this jump? Yeah. Yes, you're getting close. So the expected inflation rate, increases. Okay, and so but why is that this jump? So we're well, I'm looking at this jump, right? There is this jump in the price level. The interest rate, so the nominal interest rate will rise.
Will go up. And
Right.
From the formula that P equals to the money supply divided by the long run, when interest rate rise, the L will decrease and the price level will suddenly go up.
That's right. That's right. So the key thing is that the nominal interest rate will rise. Okay, when the nominal interest rate rise, so in the money market, as you said, in the money market, in order for the money market to be in equilibrium, the price must rise. So the money supply must be equal to money demanded. Okay, so that what that means is, let me see here. Yeah, it's just actually here. So increase nominal interest rate, decrease the demand of real. So in order for the money market to maintain equilibrium in the long run price level must jump. Okay, why? Okay, so here, this is at the moment T0. Okay, so this actually rises immediately. This is unchanged, but this rises. This is unchanged. Remember at time T0. So the P. So remember, this increases means that L decreases. L decreases. When L decreases, P has to rise. See, so the P has to rise so that the real money balance will have to fall, because the money demand, there's a decrease in real money demand. Because interest rate has risen. But interest rates, remember, nominal interest rate is the opportunity cost of holding money. Well, nominal interest rate rises, people demand less money. Okay? The demand for real money balance has gone down. So the price must rise. Okay? So the price less. Now, remember, this is the long run. I'm not saying that this is what happened. I'm not saying that this is what is going to happen in the short run. This is the long run. If we take the PVP seriously, okay, this is a long run. So this is the long run trajectory. So we're just deriving the long run trajectory. So in order to maintain a PVP, the exchange rate must jump as well. Why? Because this is unchanged, this rises, so this must rise. It's very simple. This is absolute PVP, right? So thereafter, the money supply and prices are predicted to grow at this rate, and the domestic currency is predicted to depreciate at the same rate. That is easy, right? That's the. So yeah, this is actually what I wanted to say. the previous charts show the new steady state of the economy after the permanent rise in growth rate of money supply in the home country, but the economy does not jump to the steady state immediately after the change because price level is sticky in the short run. So, I just want to emphasize that these charts are, these 4 charts, they tell you that the steady state is a asymptotic, it's the path, it's the steady state path. It's not the actual path that the economy will take, because we're talking about the long run. Okay, does that make sense? So here's a diagram which is rather complicated, right? Okay, so it's rather complicated. I would have to explain this very slowly and carefully. So you can kind of relate this diagram with the previous diagrams. So the E1, E2, R1, R2, these are just, okay, one thing I didn't write down here is that this, this is the price level, right? Okay. The price level. Okay. So this is E1. This is E1 and this is E2. Okay. So I should have written it down. So this is E1 and this is E2. Okay. This is T0. So this E1 is this E1. This E2 is that E2. Okay. And this R1, R2 just exactly corresponds to the R1, R2 in the in the other diagram. So there is no change in money supply, but the price rises from P1 to P2. So this so in other words, here we have the price level, right? The price level is like this. So this is price. This is E. And again, we have the P1 and P2 here. We have the P1 here and P2 here, okay? So P1, P2, so that corresponds to this one. So the price, when the price rises, this real money supply, real money balance falls. Okay, so we intersect the interest rate at a higher level. So in fact the increase in interest rate requires that the price has to rise, right? So that the real money demand is going to real money supplied, and then here the PPP condition determines that the exchange rate has to rise. Okay, and here this is the expected rate of return on euro deposit, and this EE, because the EE rises, okay, therefore, this curve will shift to the right. Right? The EE rises because obviously, you know, because the long run, this is just for this one time. For this one time, the EE already changes. Okay, so this is a little bit tricky. So the EE changes because the long run, people expect that the exchange rate is going to increase, right? So so everything is consistent here. Okay, so so in other words, the EE actually increases from E1 to E2 in this transition. This is just a transition. Is that clear? The curve, the expected return to euro deposits shifts out because EE increases. EE increases because of that, because of this uncovered interest parity condition. Okay, so R and E both increase. This implies EE must increase. Okay, does it make sense? Okay. So I think this is what we already saw that. So in the monetary approach, the rate of inflation increases permanently when the growth rate of money supply increases permanently. And with persistent domestic inflation, the monetary approach also predicts an increase in domestic nominal interest rate through the Fisher effect, right? Just to summarize what we have seen. So this slide basically just summarizes what we have seen there, right? Expectations of high persistent domestic inflation cause the purchasing power of the domestic currency to decrease, relatively expected purchasing power of the foreign currency being to depreciate persistently. Okay, this is the intuition behind that we have what we have seen that we have already talked about. So okay, so let me just pause here. Okay, let me pause here and see. Now we cover a lot of things. Okay, and this is difficult. I admit that this is hard. This is hard stuff. You have to digest it. Okay, so this long run trajectory. Okay, so what will happen? I'm going to show you some sort of if there is price stickiness in the short run, what would you expect to see? Okay, so you would expect to see. Okay, so let me show you. Let me show you a little bit, a few things here. Suppose there is a long-run change in growth rate of money. I would say this is just without going into very deep analysis. Okay, so this is what you should expect. You would expect that. With price stickiness, as we said, these things are just the long-run trajectory, just the steady state, right? So with price stickiness, you would expect that the interest rate will rise in the short run, but not like jump. It will sort of gradually rise with price stickiness, you see. And also, this is what you would expect, what you should expect, is that the price level, again, it will be kind of like gradually rise, right? Because there's price stickiness, right? Price is sticky. So it's not jump, it won't jump because price is sticky, so it will gradually rise. And that should be some sort of a overshooting in the exchange rate you should expect, okay? So this is assuming that there is a permanent increase in this one. So with price stickiness, that is what you kind of would expect without going into very detailed analysis, okay? So I just want to demonstrate to you that these are just the long run trajectory. These are like the steady state level. So it's like asymptotically, the price level will sort of asymptotically converge towards this long run path. Asymptotically, this E will also gradually sort of converge towards that long run path, okay? And also, this will also, right, asymptotically converge towards the long run interest rate. Okay, that's what you should expect. Okay, so is that clear? So as on the other hand, if it's a permanent decrease in the growth rate of money supply, you would expect so if this is a decrease in the rate of growth of money supply instead of increase, then you will expect the nominal interest rate to fall in the long run, right? Because the rate of inflation is going to fall, and then you should kind of expect the price level to kind of fall. It will fall. It will be like it will fall. The long run path will be this line, but then the thicker line will tell you if there's price stickiness, this is going to happen, and there's also undershooting of the exchange rate, and then go asymptotically converge towards the long run, the steady state. Does it make sense? Okay. All right. So, very good. Let me see here. It's a lot of things, right? So I don't know. I think I should pause here and see whether you have any questions. I'm sure you have lots of questions, right? It's very hard, right? Is it very difficult? So tell me, what questions do you have? What questions do you have? No questions? Means that you still don't know what's going on? You don't even know why I say that, or okay, so yeah.
Why is there no change in money supply when you say there's a change in growth rate of money supply? Because according to the graph, money supply didn't change.
Yeah, it changed. Just change the rate of growth doesn't mean that you will change it instantly.
But even when the curve shifts, the M1 is still M1.
What curve? Which curve? Which curve shift? You mean? So are you talking about this one or this one?
24. Yeah,
this one. Okay. So which one do you?
After the blue curve shift,
right.
M1 is still M1.
Yeah, it's still M1. Yeah. So there's no change in the money's the level. The level. Distinguish between level and rate. Level and rate are different. So level doesn't change. The government the government increased the rate of growth of money supply. This is the policy. This graph is purely policy. So at this time, the money supply is M1 here. But then starting from then, starting from this time, the money growth is faster. The level and the rate of growth are two different things. You remember? So the level is like, well, yeah. The level and the rate of growth are two different things, right? So it's,
But then if you, let's say if you say money supply is like the level is unchanged, then
Yeah.
in this graph, the initial part should be a horizontal line instead of a line with a slope. Like now, when time progresses, the money supply is like increasing according to this graph.
yeah.
But if you say the level is unchanged, it should be a horizontal line and then we start to increase the slope, right?
No, no, no. What I'm saying is, okay, you misunderstood what I said. I said that that's a change in monetary policy of the U.S. government. The U.S. government used to be supplying money at a constant rate of pi. But then at time t0, it just announced that from this time onward, the rate of growth of money supply will increase to pi plus delta pi. Yeah.
We're assuming is that there will be an immediate change in interest rate once they
Yes.
announce this one.
Yes.
And then what we're depicting in here is the picture in time t0 right after the announcement.
That's right.
Oh, okay.
That's right. Yeah. At time t0. And immediately after that. Yeah. That's right. So this diagram serves to tell you to tell a story to explain what the consistency of these four diagrams with the theory. So these four diagrams are fully consistent with the theory. I mean, everything we stated are consistent. Okay. So this diagram just tells you, everything is consistent with each other. Well, yeah, you've never seen a diagram like this. That's why this is also a little bit intimidating, right? So the left, yeah. So the right hand side is you have seen the right hand side before, right? It's just to the money market. I mean, this is money market equilibrium. That one is foreign exchange market equilibrium. These two are just the left hand side are just some supplementary tools, There's some tricks to make things easier to piece together. So this one is the PPP relationship, okay? Because it is so talking about here is money holding. So this is a PPP relationship. Let me see why it is PPP relationship. The E, yeah, it's nothing more than that. This one is nothing more than the PPP, the absolute PPP, which is that the E will have to be equal to what's that? P over P star. This is the absolute PPP, right? So this is this. Okay. So when P let me see. That's right. So when P rises, E also rises. Just that. When P rises, E also rises. So this is this thing. This P star this foreign price level is constant, right? Because they have zero money growth. This is the money demand, real money demand, right? So the interest rate rises instantly, as you said, because the expected rate of inflation immediately increases. When the expected rate of inflation increases, the nominal interest rate rises immediately. Now, well, not immediately, well, in the long run. I mean, this is talking about a long run trajectory. It's a long run, it will. So that's why the price has to rise. Price level has to rise to keep the money market in equilibrium, because there's greater demand. There's actually less demand for money. Okay, so here, this is because the EE rises from E1 to E2. Okay. Well, actually, it should be. I would say it's actually a little bit more tricky. It's not. I would say the EE rises because of this. Because of this. Okay. The EE rises because of this. Okay. So because this one has risen, therefore this has to rise. This is unchanged. This is just a constant. Okay. All right. Right. All right. Any other questions? Let me see what I can do here. So, yeah, I mean, we just have to absorb it, and maybe we can talk about it again next time. This is something new that you have to gradually absorb it. Okay. So let me. I still have a few minutes, so let me just go on and sort of just move on and talk about the PVP. Okay. So now shortcomings. Okay. There's really little empirical evidence for absolute purchasing power parity, unfortunately, which you should not be too surprised, right? Because we already said that log 1 price doesn't hold, and absolute purchasing power parity is almost like implied from log 1 price, right? So if log 1 price doesn't hold, you wouldn't expect the absolute PVP to hold, right? And plus also the price in the absolute PVP was absolute. So in the absolute PVP, these price levels refer to the price level of different baskets. So there's really no reason for different baskets to cost the same, even when you convert it into price of the same currency, right? So so price of identical basket when converted into single currency differs substantially. So even identical basket would not. The relative PVP is more consistent with the data, right? So this is relative PVP. If you look at the data, it's a little bit more consistent, but it also performs poorly. So here is this is a diagram. You can see that this is the yen-dollar exchange rate and the relative Japan-US price levels. Okay. So if absolute PVP holds, these blue curve and the red curve should just overlap. Obviously, they don't overlap, right? So they don't overlap. And secondly, if this relative PVP, if relative PVP holds, then what you would expect is that they kind of will be sort of, well, I don't know what to say. Relative PVP, then the rate of growth. So in other words, when they cross, they should be of the same slope when they cross. When the two curves cross, they should be of the same slope. Okay, but obviously, they are not of the same slope here. They are not of the same slope here. So relativity, in a sense, it kind of holds after a long time, in a sense, right? In some sense, it holds after a long time. So here it seems to hold more. So, but anyway, so I think I should stop here. Any questions? Okay, so today is Thursday, right? So I'll see you next week, next Tuesday. Okay? All right, have a nice weekend. If you have not signed up for attendance, please come in.